notes. Alright, so 2012 N. O'Connell question. So the trial balance of N. O'Connell, a garage owner, failed to agree on the 31st of 12, 2011. The difference was entered in a suspense account and the final accounts were prepared, which showed a net profit of €41,000. On checking the books, the following errors and omissions were discovered. So number 1, O'Connell's private car, valued at €7,000, was presented to the business. This car was later sold on credit to a debtor of the business for €7,600. The sale had been treated as a cash sale. Number 2, O'Connell had returned a motor car previously purchased on credit from a supplier for €9,000 and had entered this transaction in the relevant ledger accounts incorrectly as €9,900. However, a credit note subsequently arrived from a supplier showing a restocking charge of €300 to cover the cost of the return. The only entry made in respect of this credit note was a credit entry of €8,700 in the creditor's account. Number 3, a private debt of €1,000 owed to O'Connell had been offset in full settlement against a business debt of €1,260 owed by O'Connell. No entry had been made in the books in respect of this transaction. Number 4, payments from a business bank account for repairs to business premises €600 and insurance of private dwelling €520 were entered correctly in the bank account, but respectively credited to premises account and credited to the insurance account. Number 5, car parts previously sold on credit for €920 had been returned to O'Connell. These returns had been incorrectly entered as €20 on the credit of the equipment account and as €290 on the debit of the purchases account. Okay, so part A, journalise the necessary corrections, so 40 marks there. So like we've done in previous questions, alright, I want you to underline in red what happened by mistake and in green what should have been recorded. Okay, and hopefully it should look like this. Alright, so part 1, O'Connell's private car valued at €7,000 was presented to the business. Now I didn't underline that and you'll see why in a second. Now it says this car was later sold on credit to a debtor of the business for €7,600. The sale had been treated as a credit sale. Okay, so what the mistake was that the sale was treated as a credit sale. Alright, or sorry, a cash sale. The sale was treated by a cash sale. That is the mistake. Okay, so what actually should have been recorded is that it should have been a credit sale. Alright, so it didn't say that the fact that the car being presented to the business wasn't entered. Right, so therefore I don't need to put that in again because I know that that didn't happen by mistake. Okay, so we'll just get started one by one and look at them all individually as we're going along. Okay, so O'Connell's private car valued to €7,000 was presented to the business. Okay, that's grand and we know there was no mistakes made there. But the car was later sold on credit to a debtor of the business for €7,600. So how should that have looked? Well, sales is revenue account. We credit revenue accounts, so €7,600 there in the sales. And sold on credit to a debtor. Debtor is an asset account, so we debit the asset account debtor, €7,600. So that's how that should have looked. What happened by mistake? The sale had been treated as a cash sale. So the sales was all right. So the sales went in okay. So that's fine. No need to do anything then with the sales. But it went in as a cash sale. So 7,600 went into the bank. So you can call that cash or bank. It doesn't matter there. It can be cash or bank. All right. You're allowed to do both. And if you transfer them over to the balance sheet, you'd be allowed marks for both there as well. So let's fix it. So we're going to put in the debtor 7,600 debit side, all right, and then we're going to unwind the bank here, the 7,600. We are going to credit 7,600 for the bank there. So debtor, debit 7,600, bank, credit 7,600. Okay, so that is that fixed. Okay, so how do I put that into my part A? Well, I just take it from my workings, so 7,600 in the debit side of debtor and the bank 7,600 on the credit side of bank. So this fix it part is what goes into journalise the necessary corrections. Okay, so as you know, we have to do a narration now. So being a transfer from bank account to debtor's account due to previous incorrect entry. Anything to that effect, as long as you are mentioning the debtor and the bank, okay, or being the credit sale of a car to the debtor, okay, being treated incorrectly, whatever you want, as long as you're mentioning something from the question. Okay, part 2. O'Connell had returned a motor car previously purchased on credit from a supplier for €9,000. All right, so that is green, that actually happened, so we need to actually put that in what should have happened. So, and had entered this transaction in the relevant ledger accounts incorrectly as 9,900. Okay, so that was a mistake, and that would be put in the what happened by mistake part. So, however, a credit note subsequently arrived from a supplier showing a restocking charge of €300 to cover the cost of the return. That actually happened, that is green. And then the last sentence, the only entry made in respect of this credit note was a credit entry of 8,700 in the creditor's account. That happened by mistake, so that is red there. So let's do the green first. So the first sentence there, O'Connell had returned a motor car previously purchased on credit from a supplier for €9,000. So purchases €9,000 because that is purchase returns. So purchases when we purchase them, debit side purchases account. When we have purchase returns, we credit 9,000 there. Okay. Creditor, when we buy goods on credit from them, we credit, and when that is we return goods to them, then we would debit the creditor account there. So that's the first sentence. However, a credit note subsequently arrived from a supplier showing a restocking charge of €300 to cover the cost of the return. So we're going to record the credit note now. So 300 is the restocking charge. Okay, so 300 on the debit side of purchases and 300 on the credit side of the creditor. So that is what should have happened. All right, so what we want to do is we want to get what the balance of those two are, right? So the larger sides there, the 9,000, take away the 300 from the opposite side. Overall then 8,700 on the credit side of purchases and 8,700 on the debit side of creditor. All right, time to do what happened by mistake. So the return to the creditor had been entered in the relevant ledger accounts incorrectly as 9,900. So purchases 9,900 credit side, creditor 9,900 debit side. So that's the mistake there. So just incorrect figure. The only entry made in respect of the credit note was a credit entry of 8,700 in the creditor's account. So credit entry of 8,700 in the creditor's account, that is the mistake there. So overall, looking at this creditor account, you've got two entries on opposite sides, but overall you've got 1,200 on the debit side of creditor. Okay, so 99 minus 87 is 12 on the debit side there. Okay, so we know that we want 8,700 on the credit side of the purchases account, and what do we have? We have 9,900. So what we need to do then is we need to debit 1,200. So get rid of 1,200 of this, and then we'll have the 8,700. With the creditor account, what we want is 8,700 on the debit side. All right, what we have is 1,200 on the debit side. Okay, so 8,700 minus 1,200 is equal to creditor account €7,500 there. Okay, now as you know, our debits and credits must equal, and they don't in this case. So purchases 1,200, creditor 7,500, okay, on the debit side. So we've nothing on the credit side at all. So what we need to do is create a suspense account and 8,700 on the credit side. Okay, so now we're going to transfer the fix it part over to the journalize the necessary corrections. Okay, so purchases €1,200 on the debit side, creditor €7,500 on the credit side, and then the suspense account 8,700 on the credit side. So a little narration there, just we're mentioning something about the error there. So being correction of incorrect entries in the purchase returns and creditors account, you can mention something about the restocking charge as well if you want. You just have to mention that being correction of something from the question, or being recording of if it hasn't been entered at all. Okay, part 3. A private debt of 1,000 owed to O'Connell had been offset in full settlement against a business debt of €1,260 owed by O'Connell. So no entry had been made in the books in respect of this transaction. Okay, so let's look at the green first. So a private debt of 1,000 owed to O'Connell. So think about O'Connell personally, all right? So a private debt owed to O'Connell. So O'Connell personally, all right? They owed a private debt. So it had been offset in full settlement against a business debt of 1,260 owed by O'Connell. So O'Connell's business owed a business debt 1,260. So think about, who did they owe that to? Well, they owed the business debt to the creditor. So the creditor is going to reduce by the 1,260. Now the private debt owed by O'Connell had been offset against a business debt. All right. So O'Connell personally was owed €1,000, but then O'Connell's business owed the creditor 1,260. But they just called it quits after that, right? So technically, O'Connell personally gave the business €1,000. So when a sole trader gives something to a business, it is capital. Capital is a liability to the owner, so liability increases on the credit side. So capital 1,000, we credit capital there, €1,000. The creditor, the liability creditor, is decreasing, so we debit the creditor account 1,260. The discount received, then we obviously received a discount from our creditor, okay, because we owed them 1,260, but they took something of value, just 1,000 from us. So therefore we received a discount of €260. And even you can see there, your debits and credits must equal. All right, so capital 1,000 plus 260 is 1,260. So credit side 1,260, debit side 1,260. So what happened by mistake? No entry was made in the books, so nothing happened there at all. So to fix it, all I do is I put the items in. So I go to my part A and I transfer my workings from here, the fix it part, into my journalise the necessary corrections. So part 3, capital €1,000 credit side, creditor debit side 1,260, and then discount received €260 credit side. So what does this mean? So being private debt owed to O'Connell offset against a debt owed to a creditor of O'Connell's business, okay? Or something to that effect, as long as you are mentioning details from the error there, from number 3. Okay, part 4. Payments from a business bank account for repairs to business premises 600 and insurance of private dwelling 520 were entered correctly in the bank account, but respectively credited to premises account and credited to insurance account. So what actually happened there? What actually happened there was that payments from a business bank account for repairs to business premises 600 and insurance of private dwelling 520, that actually happened. Okay, so let's enter that as it would happen. So the bank, right, both of them come out of the bank, 1,120 in total there from the bank. Repairs to the business premises. So repairs is an expense, okay? So we debit the expense repairs there, €600. And insurance of private dwelling. So N. O'Connell, right, paid out of the business bank account for insurance for their own private dwelling. So when we take something out of the business, that is drawings. So 520 we debit to drawings. So to drawings we debit. The opposite of drawings is capital. So we debit drawings, credit capital. Okay, so drawings 520, debit side there. So what happened? They were entered correctly in the bank account, but respectively credited to premises account and credited to insurance account. So this is what happened by mistake. So the bank account, that was entered correctly, so we don't need to do anything with the bank account. So that was what they did. But they credited to the premises account, Okay, so they said that that is like selling €600 worth of premises. Okay, so that's what they said there. And then they credited the insurance account as well. So that is like the expense insurance reducing as well. So that's completely wrong. Completely wrong accounts and on the complete wrong sides as well. So let's fix it. All right, so we don't need to fix the bank because the bank was entered correctly. But the repairs account, we need to enter that. So 600 debit side repairs. Drawings, 520 debit side drawings. All right. Then our premises account is incorrect on the credit side, so we debit the premises account. The insurance, 520 is incorrect, so we debit the insurance account. And then suspense, credit side, €2,240. And that is that fix there. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our fixed part and we're going to enter it into our part A. So we've got repairs, €600 there. We've got drawings, €520. We've got premises, €600. We've got insurance, €520, and we've got suspense, €2240. Now, the last thing that we have to do is do our narration there. So, being recording of payments and repairs and drawings and cancellation of incorrect entries in billings and insurance accounts. Okay, so that's part 4. Part 5. Car parts previously sold on credit for €920 had been returned to O'Connell. These returns had been incorrectly entered as €20 on the credit of equipment account and as €290 on the debit of purchase account. Okay, so first of all, car parts previously sold on credit for €920 had been returned to O'Connell. Okay, so car parts previously sold on credit at $920 returned to O'Connell. So what should have happened there? Okay, so sales returns. All right, sales is a revenue account. We credit the revenue, but when we get returns back into us, all right, that we had previously sold, that is debit side. So 920 sales returns on the debit side. The asset debtor has reduced, so therefore when an asset account reduces, we credit it, so €920 on the credit side there. So that is what should have happened. Now these returns have been incorrectly entered as €20 on the credit side of the equipment account and as €290 on the debit side of the purchase account. So that is what happened by mistake there. Okay, how will we fix this now? So I'm going to enter the sales returns and the debtor. All right, so 920 this side, 920 this side. And then the equipment and purchases account, to undo these, we're just going to simply put them on the opposite side of where they've previously been recorded. So the €20, we debit it to get rid of it, and the purchases on the debit side, we credit to get rid of that. Now, we notice that our debits and credits do not equal here. So we're €270 down on the debit side, so we're going to have to debit suspense €270. Okay, so that's part 5. So all we have to do then is take our fixed parts from part 5 and slot them into our part A. Okay, so sales returns, 920 debit side, debtor, 920 credit side, equipment, €20 debit side, purchases, €290 credit side, and then suspense, €270 debit side. Okay, so what will my narration be here? Being sales returns entered in error in equipment and purchases accounts. So that is part 5 totally complete there. All right, so that is part A. So that was your first part, the first thing that you were asked to do here in this 60 marker question from the 2012 paper. So part B, prepare a statement showing the corrected net profit. So again, we're just looking at the items, okay, that affect our trading profit and loss. And what are those items? They are our revenues and our expenses, okay? So looking down in part 1, debtor and bank, they both belong in the bank account. Purchases is the TPL, so I've highlighted that. Creditor, balance sheet, suspense will go into the suspense account. Creditor, balance sheet, capital balance sheet, creditor, balance sheet. Discount received goes into the TPL, so I highlight that there. Repairs is an expense belonging in the TPL, so I highlight that. Drawings goes in the balance sheet. Premises goes in the balance sheet. Insurance is an expense, so that goes in the TPL, so I highlight that. And then suspense will go in the suspense account. Number 5, sales returns 920. Okay, that goes in the TPL, so I highlight that. My debtor 920 is an asset, so I minus the asset account there. Equipment is an asset account, so that's a balance sheet. Purchases, I'm going to highlight that as well because that's a TPL item, so 290 on the credit side, and then suspense 290 debit side. Okay, so I've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 figures from the TPL that need to go into the statement of corrected net profit. So let's start that now. So back to the question, the difference was entered in a suspense account and the final accounts were prepared which showed a net profit of 41,000. So remember, this net profit is incorrect, all right, because of the mistakes that belong in the TPL for that, right? So let's remember again, only our expenses and revenues go into the trade and profit and loss account. So items on the debit side, the trade and profit and loss, are usually expenses. Okay, but it could be a revenue being reduced as well. Either way, what's going to happen to our TPL items that are on the debit side is that they are going to decrease the net profit figure. Now, revenues belong in the TPL. When a revenue increases, we credit it. Okay, when a revenue decreases, we debit it. So items, it could be an expense being reduced either on the credit side. Items on the credit side are going to increase the net profit figure. All right, so let's get started. So number 2, purchases. That is going to reduce my net profit figure. So number 2, purchases minus 1,200. Number 3, we've got discount received on the credit side. That is going to increase my net profit figure. So discount received, 260, increase there. Number 4, I've got repairs. Okay, that is going to decrease my net profit figure. Repairs minus €600 there. Then I've got insurance, €520. So minus €520 there. Then number 5, I've got sales returns. That's going to reduce my net profit figure. So minus 920 there. And then my purchases on the credit side, okay, is going to increase my net profit figure. So that is going to go up here into my figures from the credit side. So 41,000 plus 260 plus 290 is equal to 41,550. Minus 1,200 minus 600 minus 520 minus 920 is equal to €38,310. All right, so that is your corrected net profit, €38,310 there. All right, so that is part B done, your statement of corrected net profit. Next, in part C, we have a bit of theory to do. So number 1 says, what is the purpose of preparing a trial balance? And then number 2, state and explain 2 types of errors not revealed by the trial balance, and that is 6 marks there altogether. So, what's the purpose of preparing a trial balance? So a trial balance is prepared in order to test the accuracy of double entry bookkeeping before preparing final accounts. A trial balance should have the same total of debits and credits and have the same amounts. Because under double entry bookkeeping, every debit entry should have a corresponding credit entry. Number 2 then, state and explain 2 types of errors not revealed by the trial balance. So this is your COP core then, all right? So error of commission first, let's explain it. So an error of commission occurs when the correct amount is posted to the correct side of the incorrect account. For example, goods sold on credit to Brian Brady debited in error to John Brady's account. Next we have error of original entry. So these are errors made in the books of first entry which are then subsequently posted to the appropriate ledger accounts. Example, purchases from T Long, €223, entered as €322 in the purchase book and posted accordingly to both the purchases account and to Long's account. Next, we have error of principal. So an error of principal arises when an item is posted to the incorrect class of account. For example, A boutique owner purchased a vehicle and treated it as purchase of stock. Next, we have compensating errors. So this is where an error on the debit side of one account is compensated by another error of an equal amount on the credit side of another account. For example, a cash payment of €550 for repairs entered as €55 on the debit side of the repairs account and on the credit side of the cash account. Error of omission is next. So transactions are completely left out of the ledger accounts and the final balance. Both the debit and credit are omitted. An example, a cheque for 5,600 paid by Gold out of a private bank account for 16 months hire of lifting equipment had not been entered in the books. And then next, reversal of entries. So this happens when the correct figures are used but entries are made on the incorrect sides of the accounts involved, i.e. where the debit entry is on the credit side and the credit entry is on the debit. For example, a sale of goods €300 to T. O'Brien was entered on the credit side of T. O'Brien's account and on the debit side of the sales account. The incorrect figure is to be cancelled and the correct figure entered on the correct side. So all you were asked there was 2, alright? But I listed all 6 there for you.